A woman claiming bed bugs attacked her on vacation.
I have never had any bites like this.
A nightmare shared by a lot of travelers bringing bed bugs back home. We're taking action with clues most people miss until it's too late. Thursday at 5 on ABC Action News.
Finally, America Strong, and a reminder there are still families, still pets recovering, and there are always Good Samaritans. With so many families still recovering from Florence, there was an image today that reminded us of those families, their pets, and the good people who helped save them. This image posted not long ago a camera documenting the Humane Society of Missouri's disaster response team. A desperate call from a dog owner who said, "My pet is still in the house." Her white Maltese named Soshi. The team made 2 attempts, but the floodwater was too high. The 3rd time they tried, the water had receded just enough.
1, 2.
The rescuers, Chad Gard and Jessica Crampton, you can see their heads just above the water, kicking in the door.
Come on, puppy.
Immediately spotting Soshi. She had been on a couch, that sofa floating in the living room for nearly a week. They try coaxing her out and then try opening the door even more.
Go in. Here, Jess, I'll hold the door.
Then they get her.
I got it. Coming out the front of the boat.
The dog safe, happy, swimming out. Comforting her, checking her over. She was okay. They fed her her first meal in a week. And tonight, the Humane Society telling us Soshi has been reunited with her owner, one of the dozens of animals they rescued during Florence. Soshi is home, and way to go to those Good Samaritans. I hope to see you right back here tomorrow. Good night.
The most powerful Atlantic storm in recorded history.
A worst-case scenario for South Florida.
I mean, this is a buzzsaw.
If you are in an evacuation zone in South Florida, you need to leave.
Florida Governor Rick Scott warned about the significant storm surge.
At my direction, all tolls have been waived across Florida roadways. I'm activating another 900 Guard members.
The governor really is getting out in front of this.
We can rebuild your home, but we cannot rebuild your life. I'm Rick Scott. I approve this message.
I also want to give a shout out to you, Miss Floyd, and to the Dream Defenders.
Andrew Gillum got through the primary thanks to a radical group called the Dream Defenders. These radicals argue for, quote, a border-free tomorrow, that police and prisons have no place in justice. Gillum's backers say the United States is the biggest bully in the history of the planet. Their co-founder says Andrew Gillum is part of the movement. And if he's governor, they will move a radical platform. Andrew Gillum, he's just too radical.
At Johnston Jewelers, we can't wait to see you shine, Tampa Bay. Whether it's your anniversary or you're gonna pop the big question, we're excited to see you. I'm Grant Johnston, and I can't wait to see you shine.
Need something investigated? Contact the I-Team.
You're watching Taking Action Against Domestic Violence, live from the ABC Action News Studios, marking a decade of awareness. With your hosts, Lisette Campos, Wendy Ryan, Dia Riley, and Jamison Euler.
Thank you for joining us for Taking Action Against Domestic Violence, a decade of awareness.
We're proud to have spent the last 10 years raising awareness about domestic violence, a journey that would not have been possible without your support.
Along the way, we've learned 2 important lessons. First, domestic violence hides in plain sight. It is everywhere in every community.
And we've also learned this work of domestic violence awareness and prevention is not exclusive to victims and survivors. Anyone can get involved using your unique talents.
And during the next hour, you'll meet teachers, artists, police officers, all helping victims. Just some of the many professions that we've spotlighted over the last decade.
And this year, as we've done every year, you will see the domestic violence hotline at the bottom of your screen throughout the entire broadcast. That number, 800-500-1119. If you or someone you know is in a domestic violence situation, you can call the hotline anonymously and connect to local resources to get help.
Every 5 minutes, there's a reported case of domestic violence somewhere in the state of Florida. More than 106,000 cases were reported last year, but most of them you didn't hear about. Instead, it's the ones involving active shooters that grab most of the headlines. There were 4 in our state. This year, it's no surprise that businesses everywhere have been asking for more active shooter training, asking for it in record numbers, including our company here at ABC Action News. But when the Tampa police officer arrived to give us that training, we realized that he was also doing something else. He showed us how many times that active shooter is first the abuser next door.
He enters through the front door.
Tampa police officer Sean Mahabir is a very busy man.
The majority of businesses that contact me to do the active shooter presentations range, from law firms, churches, schools, and so forth.
He's delivered 200 active shooter trainings in 14 months. His ease with public speaking, his command of the material make him the resident expert. His audiences range from city employees to local businesses, including our own employees here at ABC Action News.
It seems like everyone is very open to receiving the active shooter training.
Yes.
If you were to ask, may I go in to do domestic violence awareness training, they might not open the door for you.
And that's interesting.
Indicators of potential violence. These are the red flags.
15 years of police work have taught him the active shooter you train for and don't really expect to see is closer than you think.
A lot of times when I discuss the domestic violence past of some of the active shooters, Sandy Hook, Texas, the church shooting, even the Pulse, had a lot to do with domestic violence that started there.
He must have snapped. No such thing.
The officer delivers key pieces of domestic violence awareness during each active shooter training. It's not something he planned for or even realized he was doing at first, until this started happening.
You're looking at employees from multiple businesses who have that look of recognition in their eyes.
Absolutely, on many occasions.
His list of warning signs leading up to active shooter situations, uncomfortably familiar for some in the audience.
I see tears. I see at the end of the presentation coming up to me and telling me their personal situation at home and what's going on and how they're concerned that this could turn into a more violent situation. So I see it on an everyday basis.
Pay attention to when someone says, I'm having issues at home.
They are victims of domestic violence hiding in plain sight or living in denial until this officer gets down to business.
When someone is having problems at home, she may come into work a little bit disheveled. She may have that look on her face that, she might be crying all night, whatever it may be. And we're kind of in that mode of kind of putting on the blinders and saying to ourselves, well, it's not my business. When that individual decides to come to her workplace and your office or your cubicle is next to hers, is it not your business now? And the answer is absolutely yes.
Making that connection is important, he says, because it can stop more active shooter incidents from happening. Last year in Florida, there were more than 106,000 reported cases of domestic violence, ticking time bombs, overshadowed by 4 active shooters.
Active shooter training, it seems as though it's happening more and more and often. The statistics are proving that it's happening more often than not. Domestic violence happens every day, throughout the day.
He points to Central Florida's most infamous active shooter. 29-year-old Omar Mateen had the domestic violence indicators in his life years before stepping inside the Pulse nightclub, June 12, 2016. His first wife filling their divorce papers with detailed accounts of abuse. His second wife testifying to emotional and sexual abuse, even beatings during the pregnancy of their son. Enough for a jury to find her not guilty of helping her husband plan the second worst mass shooting by one gunman in U.S. history.
Pay attention to those indicators of violence, to pay attention to those things that don't necessarily seem like an active shooter thing. For example, domestic violence. Pay closer attention to those problems at home. Care. You know, take out those earbuds, take away those blinders, start paying attention, start being more aware to your environment and to the people that are around you, because there's a lot of hurt out there.
And to give you a sense of just how busy Officer Mahabir is, he tells us he averages 12 trainings a week during the spring, summer, and fall. And not just in the city of Tampa, he will train anywhere in the Tampa Bay area. If you would like to submit a request for Officer Mahabir to train your group, you can contact him at asapforsurvival.com.
Officer Mahabir realizes he has a role to play when it comes to raising awareness of domestic violence. He's got a lot in common with the education team at the Tampa Museum of Art. And it might surprise you to hear how important their work is for kids in shelter. These museum employees are not professional advocates, but it has not stopped them from making a difference.
That they have a place in a public space. That's really important.
At the Tampa Museum of Art, the education team has been quietly at work creating a safe space for young victims of domestic violence for a decade. Every month, the beauty and light of this iconic space is traded in for the contrasting world of a child in shelter. The museum provides the art supplies and teacher. The secret location and the children are provided by the Spring of Tampa Bay, the state's certified domestic violence center serving Hillsborough County. This safe space created by Art Space.
Art is the great universal equalizer in language.
Michael Tomore has been at the helm of the museum since 2015. An art industry veteran with a national reputation for community engagement, he felt an instant connection to Art Space, love at first sight.
Give them an opportunity to express themselves visually and embrace their thoughts through art is really important.
The leader of the Bay Area's largest domestic violence center agrees.
We know that feelings aren't inherently bad. Even those feelings that we feel like are bad, those feelings of anger and frustration and sadness and sorrow, they're just as valid as the feelings of happiness and joy. And giving kids the ability to express the full range of their emotions helps them move forward in healing, and helps them understand that I can feel sad today, I can feel angry, I can feel scared, but that feeling isn't the only thing I can feel.
Mindy Murphy is the Spring's president and CEO. During a rare look inside the shelter classroom, we saw the masterpieces the children have made. Little hands, beautiful flowers, a tiny heart. Each creation evidence of a child expressing their emotions. Art unlocking the door to hope. Carefully guiding them is the museum teacher known to the children as only Miss Martha.
And the kids always remember Miss Martha because she's just so great with the kids. She has a belief that every kid can be an artist, and she really empowers the children here to find their voice, to find the medium that works for them, and to let their inner artist out. And sometimes it's the opportunity to put something ugly onto the paper and to draw the sad thing that's happened to you and put it out into the world. And I think in a way that decreases the power it has over you.
Many breakthrough moments happening in crayon.
You can tell by the drawing which of those parents is scary to that kid. That's sometimes the first representation of what's going on in the house.
The monthly visits in shelter are accompanied by visits to the museum. We cannot tell you when or even how often for security reasons. But suffice it to say, when these little artists come, they are the super guests of honor.
You get all of the stories about how they're like, oh my gosh, this is the best day ever, or look what I did. I'm gonna go home and show my mom.
Cassandra Abel, the museum education coordinator, says children feel a deep sense of accomplishment when they see their artwork on display.
They are so proud of their artwork. When I come down here to visit them, when they've been here, They are so excited to show me what they've done and tell me all about what they've drawn or painted. So it's really empowering for them to have some sense that I did this. It's a confidence booster.
For the Tampa Museum of Art, it's mission accomplished when these young victims learn they can make something beautiful in life, not just on paper.
Our goal is to make sure and let them know that they can do it.
And we want to thank the folks at the Tampa Museum of Art for sharing their story with us. There are so many security concerns anytime you're talking about children at a domestic violence shelter. And when we started this journey, we were not even sure we would get to meet the art teacher who goes into the shelter to work with the children. But coming up, you'll get to meet this amazing woman who's known to the children only as Miss Martha. Dia?
Wendy, we're all looking forward to meeting Miss Martha. And my assignment this year also took me to an art museum on the other side of the bridge. The team at the Dali Museum is helping domestic violence survivors, and their approach, just like Salvador Dali himself, comes with a twist.
The Dali Museum in St. Petersburg is a uniquely inspiring place.
So it looks like a double image.
Salvador Dali's masterpieces are breathtaking, making you stop and stare and think.
And so there you have the sun, and then his head is the sun. So sun, yeah. He liked stuff like that. It was very much his style of humor.
Dali's fascination with optical illusions distort our view of reality.
Basically what he did is the original painting that you see of Gala, once you get far enough away, it becomes Abraham Lincoln. And what was originally the sun and the figure of Christ, that becomes the bullet wound that Lincoln suffered in the assassination.
We see one thing up close and then something very different when we take a step back. That philosophy is also the inspiration for one-of-a-kind program here. Housed among these works of art, the Dali Museum's Innovation Lab, an in-house think tank encouraging creative problem-solving to unlock untapped potential.
I think Dali really does an incredible job as an inspiration to show how perspective can change how we approach challenges.
It's the reason Michael Maldonado, the corporate relations and sponsorship manager at the Innovation Lab, reached out to CASA, the Domestic Violence Center of Southern Pinellas County. He wanted to empower women and knew this program could do it.
We sit here and we say we want to end domestic violence. We can't keep on doing the same thing we've been doing. We have to think differently. And when Michael came to us and presented this, we thought, why not? This is something totally different. It's, you know, such a cool place to go and visit. Let's try this.
So they did.
We're going to go ahead and get started with ideation, which I love that word, ideate. Yeah? It's like create, but with ideas.
Businesses pay thousands for a course like this. Michael got corporate sponsors to pay for this group from CASA. They are all stuck in a situation they're desperate to change.
When you live with domestic violence day in, day out, you begin to think, this is it, this is how my life's going to be, it's never going to be any other way. And it's not you don't want to get out, but you seriously cannot come up with an idea of how to get out of this.
That's where the term ideation comes in. But first, the warm-up. The challenge here, to reinvent the toothbrush.
It could be a part of the brush, it could be how it looks, it could be what it does, it could be how it sounds. It could be anything.
They have 5 minutes to do it, and they rise to the challenge. One creates a slobber catcher. Another, bristles that form around the tooth. And then, this one.
Essential oil diffuser, or it could also give you like a facial, like steam facial while you're brushing your teeth.
Oh my God. Double duty toothbrush.
Next, they tackle their own personal challenges, and once again, the creative ideas flow.
Continue to reach out to spread hope and faith and recovery no matter what.
One of the ladies having trouble finding affordable housing came up with this, connecting with like-minded people to share an apartment or house. Watching this survivor's progress is Pat Riley Sanderson, a CASA advocate.
Just broadening your mind. It doesn't have to be artistically creative, but just broadening your mind and experiencing something new, something different. And for these women, something new and something different that is good for them and that is good to them is the new experience.
At the end of the day, they gather around the Dali's famous wishing tree.
In the next 24 hours, what are you going to do as a step towards your goal? And you're going to write that down in a few words on this wristband.
Pledging to themselves that they will look at their lives in a completely different way, not as victims, but as victors, worthy of a better life.
In your mind, I want you to think about what your intention is, and I want you to hold it tight. Give yourselves a round of applause.
It's a powerful message that can transform a life. At the beginning of this course, the ladies were asked to pick a color representing their mood. 4 hours later, look what happens.
Now I picked this one because I'm feeling lighter and brighter because I have some things figured out that I hadn't had figured out earlier.
I had a little bit of a confusion this morning when we first entered, and it kind of tried to test my spirits.
In the beauty of this place, survivors learn that artists aren't the only ones with a blank canvas. They now know that they also have the power to create a masterpiece in their own lives.
But this white, you guys really made me feel so like you just took me out of my own head, and it's gonna bless me, so I thank you.
We want to thank the Dali Museum for opening their doors and making a difference in the lives of domestic violence survivors. The staff there tells us it was a moving experience for them as well. They're used to helping transform businesses, but in this case, they feel they're transforming lives. Jameson?
Adia, this is the 10th year our team has come together for this campaign, sharing stories of hope and healing. And over the years, I've had the privilege of getting to know the courageous men and women on the front lines. We started out tonight's broadcast with Tampa police officer Sean Mahabir. And as we head into the second part of our special, we have this message from him, as well as 2 officers who we have honored as taking action against domestic violence Officers of the Year.
Standing emergency. Standing emergency. My mommy and Daddy are having a fight.
A lot of times, unfortunately, you'll have a situation where we've been called and the person called to get the potentially violent person to calm down and stop what they're doing. They didn't necessarily mean for us to actually respond to the location, and once we're there, it can be very hostile from every angle.
Your heart rate's up, I'm sure your blood pressure's up, your adrenaline's flowing.
There's a lot of emotion. There's a lot of anger, there's a lot of rage, there's a lot of that's happening already at that scene.
I'm talking to the police, Mommy! Stop it!
I think back about little children that I happen to be at their home when the parents were violent towards each other, and sometimes seriously, and I often wonder what happened to the kids, if they're okay, if they grew up and are safe.
They're having a fight because this has been going on forever and ever.
The love has nothing to do with it. If this person loves you and they're still doing what they're doing, you can't take that love into account.
The person that would go and physically harm a victim is a liar and can't be trusted. So start by not believing the lie.
I am Detective Lionel DeVoe, and I'm with the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office.
I am Alan Hill, and I'm a retired law enforcement officer with 32 years of experience.
I'm Officer Sean Mahabir of the Tampa Police Department. When I put on this badge and this gun belt, your life is more important than mine. And I do care, and we do care. There's a large contingency of law enforcement officers out here that this is what we do every day.
You're watching Taking Action Against Domestic Violence, a decade of awareness. We'll be right back.
I'm Glenn Brogna, Verizon's Director of Retail Sales for North Florida, including Tampa Bay. We're a proud sponsor of the Taking Action Against Domestic Violence Awareness campaign. Domestic violence is a national problem that impacts our communities, neighbors, co-workers, friends, and family members, including right here in Tampa Bay. In the United States, 1 in every 4 women and 1 in every 7 men have experienced severe physical violence from an intimate partner, and each year, more than 15 million children witness violence in homes. Dealing with the consequences of domestic violence in our society is an enormous challenge. We believe Verizon's network and technologies and our people can be part of the solution. We focus on funding organizations that support victims and survivors of domestic violence and those that strive to prevent it. For more information on how we give back, please visit our website. Together, we can make a difference.
Welcome back. You're watching Taking Action Against Domestic Violence, a decade of awareness. To mark that special anniversary, the Scripps Howard Foundation, the philanthropic arm at our parent company, has donated $10,000 to help maintain the statewide domestic violence hotline. And over the years, they've donated $25,000 total. Last year alone, nearly 4,700 people called the hotline during the campaign. Once again, that number to call is 1-800-500-1119. It will be on the bottom of your screen throughout the rest of this broadcast.
Wendy, that hotline has been a centerpiece for this campaign, and so has this right here. This is the wheel of power and control. It exposes the hidden layers of domestic violence beyond the physical abuse. It is the most widely used tool by advocates and educators nationwide. You can find that wheel and the equality wheel on abcactionnews.com/DV. It is interactive. You can print it out to make it easy to share with someone. You may not need it now, but someday you or someone you know might. Lisette?
Over the years, our next guest has helped us raise awareness of the invisible signs of domestic violence, the emotional warfare, the tactics used in financial abuse. In fact, since 2013, she's even helped us spread that message in both Spanish and English language interviews. So when we found out she needed our help with something priceless to her, we were very happy to oblige.
She's done this a million times before, one color here, another color there. The artist creates her next masterpiece. This is Zuli painting her heart out since she was a teenager.
I'm excited about it.
But this time, it's different.
You think it's ready?
I keep looking over it, like there are little things I can add here and there.
This time, it's a promise kept. On March 18, 2015, Zuli was driving her boys to school when an out-of-control car sent another car crashing into them head-on. The impact killing her 16-year-old son, Kelmy, and landing her in a coma.
At that moment, I just started to reflect on what was really important.
Doctors didn't just save Zuli, they placed her on a journey of gratitude. She delivered her first thank yous to the first responders from her crash.
And they all said it. We never know what happens to you after we leave you.
4 months after the accident, she walked into their fire station 7 months pregnant. At that moment, the first responders realized they had saved mother and child from this wreckage.
They were so happy to see me because they really thought I had died. And so I thought, my gosh, what would it mean for me to see the officer that helped me the night? I'm sorry.
The officer she's trying to talk about is the one she's making this for.
How are you? I don't know if you remember me.
The first responder who saved her years before the crash.
How you been? I'm great. I'm sorry. I was like, I am not going to cry. I just wanted to tell you that.
Almost 4 years to the day, in March 2011, St. Pete police officer Christopher Allen met Zuli, a victim of domestic violence. She was bloody, bruised, and ashamed after a year of emotional, financial, and that day, physical abuse.
You got down to eye level with me, and you talked to me. You're so kind.
Steeled by his compassion, Zuli resolved to leave her abuser.
He knew it. He knew I was embarrassed. He knew I was an accomplished woman. And he would say things to me like, oh, go ahead and call the police. By the time they get here, it'll take them about 5 minutes to get here. I will beat your face in so hard that you will have to sip out of a straw for the rest of your life.
Hanging on her every word, he realized a night on the job for him had been a life-altering moment for her.
Like, your disposition to me that night, I did not feel shame at all.
And that was just the beginning of their emotional reunion inside police headquarters this summer. Out of Zuli's heart poured her gratitude, showing Officer Allen the art collection she'd created with him in mind.
This is actually the police report.
Is it really?
Yes, the police report.
Introducing him to her husband, Mark, their blended family, the daughter she almost lost in the crash. But there was someone there that looked familiar to the officer.
Isaiah, you grab that one?
Zuli's son, Isaiah. It was not their first meeting. Isaiah was 7 when he helped save them from domestic violence.
Amazing, really. I mean, the first thing is like amazing. And I look at the artwork, I listen to her story, and again, just amazing. You know, she seen that night appeared to be at rock bottom, and now, you know, to see her today and her story is just, it is amazing, because normally we don't get the end result of a lot of the calls that we go on.
Zuli told Officer Allen in detail how his actions changed her life.
I was actually shocked. She remembered, like, verbatim some of the words I was saying that night. I mean, you know, I read the report, and I remember the call, you know, but the verbatim, the certain things I said, you know, I wouldn't have remembered that.
This gem surprising him most of all. The DV awareness pamphlet he gave her that night, she kept all these years.
You had highlighted it in 2 different colors. You used 2 different color highlighters, and you also like underlined phrases on top of the highlighting that you did. And it stuck out at me, and although I didn't read it right away, when I started having symptoms of PTSD and I needed help, I grabbed that pamphlet that you gave me, and I just read the highlighted portions and the stuff that you just underlined with a pen, and then I went to CASA, and they were my support system.
The officer's use of a highlighter had made that piece of paper a game changer for her.
Will you ever look at a pamphlet the same way again?
Probably not. Probably every time I hand them out now, I'm gonna think of her and, you know, the impact that had that night. Truly, you know, we put this uniform on. We are out there to help. You know, not everybody likes what we have to do on any given day, but we are there to help. And stories like this, it does make it all worth it.
For Zuli as well, grateful to finally deliver the thank you that almost never happened.
And you said to me, I believe you. And I think as a victim, when you come out of the shadows of shame that you envelop you as a domestic violence victim, you look for validation that you really aren't that girl. And you were that first person that gave it to me. And as I went on my journey of healing, and I looked back at all the interactions that I had, especially with men, God always reminded me that my first interaction was with you, and that you were very kind. And I am so deeply grateful.
You're welcome.
And our team here is so grateful and honored as well to help make that moment happen. It was very emotional on both sides of the camera.
It certainly was, and then we got to experience it again. I was able to share that video with one of the St. Petersburg Police Department's top cops so he could see how meaningful his work is.
You got down to eye level with me, and you talked to me. You were so kind.
We showed the reunion video of survivor Zuli Felton and St. Pete police officer Christopher Allen to the Assistant Chief of Police Antonio Gilliam.
You gave me a CASA pamphlet.
Along with CASA Executive Director Lariana Forsyth and Sherry Cluster and Angela Williams, 2 victim advocates within St. Petersburg's police department.
The officers respond to so many of these calls throughout their career, and they don't really know what type of impact they have. They have no idea.
If only Assistant Chief Antonio Gilliam had an idea of the impact his dedication over the years to helping domestic violence victims around St. Petersburg had and will have with this new brochure. His officers now come armed to domestic violence calls with a pamphlet much like Zuli's, but more informative and more universal so that residents, regardless of their race, age, or gender, see themselves in the material.
It was long overdue for us to update our pamphlets.
Gilliam's idea to update the pamphlets was born out of necessity. The Parkland school shooting on Valentine's Day forced his hand.
What can we do to provide more information?
The high-ranking member of the St. Pete Police Department was in the process of identifying an officer who could work more closely with DV survivors at CASA, the state-certified domestic violence center serving southern Pinellas. The mass shooting 249 miles away was followed by the governor's order of armed school resource officers at every school. That created a major blow to the police department's budget. Instead of giving up, Gilliam kept pushing forward, looking for a way to help CASA reach more people in St. Pete. No task too small or insignificant. The handouts could use some work, he thought. For pennies on the dollar, Gilliam knew it was a wealth of information for a victim.
This is a very deep issue, and he understood the complexities. And from the very first time we met, we forged an alliance that somehow together we were going to work to solve the issue here in Pinellas County.
An issue that runs deep. Pinellas County ranks second in the Tampa Bay area with the number of reported DV cases and deaths, fourth in the state. In St. Petersburg, police there worked more domestic violence calls last year than the entire sheriff's office.
It's a little brochure, but it is powerful.
For the women who helped design it, Zuli's story showed them the pamphlet handed out by officers at DV calls can change a victim's life.
That brochure is not just a piece of paper. It has all the necessary resources, and that's what victims need.
And we have all the information in there with injunctions and the CASA, the victim advocate's contact information, the state attorney's contact information.
Assistant Chief Gilliam knows the mood of his community starts in the home. Domestic violence is deeply personal for him, a cancer in the Tallahassee neighborhood where he grew up.
I've seen it growing up, and I've also witnessed it over 17 years in law enforcement.
The first time the chief and I met, there was a spark in his eye or a twinkle, and I could tell he got it.
We have some guests from victim advocates.
At daily roll call, Gilliam brings in the state attorney's office to better train his officers on DV issues. He strives for more of them to be like Officer Allen when they encounter a domestic violence victim. A badge and a gun can make a community feel safe. But for Gilliam, compassionate officers and a piece of paper can change a person's life forever and break the cycle of violence.
Unlike a robbery, where something was taken from you, or an auto theft where your car is stolen, that, there's something tangible that's taken away from you. With domestic violence, a lot of things that are intangible are taken away, So I want to make sure we reinforce the fact that although it's not materialistic things that are often taken away, those intangible things are just as, or if not more important, your faith in humanity.
The assistant chief has seen his share of inhumanity, first as a patrol officer, undercover vice and narcotics detective, commander of the street crimes unit as well, all at the St. Pete Police Department. Promoted to assistant chief earlier this year, his cases over the years are laced with the wreckage of domestic violence.
And you don't want to ever use the word epidemic, but you have to figure out what's going on.
And for the first time in 10 years of this special, the law enforcement officers spotlighted in our program are joining us live in the studio right now.
Officer Allen, when we did that reunion, Zuli was there and she almost wanted to show you what she had done, but the work that she was doing for you wasn't finished yet. And so we have the piece of art that she's made for you, her gift of gratitude to you. And as we all looked at it, we were kind of sharing our Kleenex because it was very emotional. And on the back, she writes, "In honor of Officer Christopher Allen for being the light in my moment of darkness. He was right." She writes, "I'm okay. I'm actually more than okay." And she said that your words to her, "You're going to be okay. You're stronger than you think," that it really made an impact in her. She calls it an imprint on her heart. And so we thought that it was important to invite the Assistant Chief of Police to be here representing the police force when we presented you with this gift that Zuli has made just for you.
And there's a good reason, because Assistant Chief Gilliam isn't just here to support you, Officer Allen. As a matter of fact, Chief, we're here because we have a surprise for you. On behalf of our team here at ABC Action News, we are proud to present you with our 2018 Taking Action Against Domestic Violence Officer of the Year Award. On our 10th anniversary, it is well-deserved for all you've done for our community this year, especially with that pamphlet, redesigning that has been so instrumental, as we've seen from Officer Allen's story. So thank you as our Taking Action Against Domestic Violence Officer of the Year Award, as a matter of fact. Congratulations.
Did not expect that.
You did not. I know you didn't.
We were a little nervous. We called your secretary and said, please make sure that he comes to our studio. You are, we started doing this in 2011, and you become our 9th Officer of the Year.
It's an honor.
And just today, we were talking about the difference that you're making in the police department.
And it's small things, but they become big things. As a matter of fact, as this emblem that I'm holding up here, you guys have now started putting this on 400 of your cruisers starting today, this domestic violence awareness ribbon that you're placing on all of your cruisers.
Correct. And I just have to say, I'm just one of 562 men and women at the St. Petersburg Police Department.
Yeah.
And Officer Allen, he epitomizes what we represent. So I definitely didn't do anything on my own. It's officers like this.
Teamwork makes the dream work.
It's teamwork.
Well, we're so proud of you guys. Thank you so much for everything you've done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're watching Taking Action Against Domestic Violence, a decade of awareness. As we go to break, here's a salute to all the law enforcement officers we've honored since 2011 with our Officer of the Year Award.
Domestic violence. Almost 50% of Americans agree that financial abuse is the hardest sign for an outsider to recognize, more than the physical or emotional ones. It affects 1 in every 4 women, but more than 1/3 of us never talk about it, not even with friends or family. And that silence keeps victims trapped. That's why the Allstate Foundation created Purple Purse, an initiative to help survivors become empowered to find a safe way out.
The public struggles when it comes to recognizing signs of financial abuse and knowing how to help victims. Although we know it's not easy, purplepurse.com can help.
The Allstate Foundation is taking action to help victims gain independence and learn about resources to find a safe way out and to thrive. Purplepurse.com has resources for survivors, nonprofits, and for the public.
You can also find resources in Spanish and information around awareness campaigns. Speaking up can make a difference, but it can be hard to find the right words when you are talking to a friend, family member, or colleague. Visit purplepurse.com to help start the conversation.
And welcome back. You're watching Taking Action Against Domestic Violence, a decade of awareness. These 39 empty chairs represent the 39 people who died in our community last year, all of them victims of domestic violence. How many chairs we'll end up with next year is a terrifying thought after the last 7 days of September. In 1 week, 12 people died in 6 different cases. Now, in the past, they would have been called murder-suicides, and that's it. But now, with more community awareness, we're making the connection with domestic violence. At these crime scenes, we've heard the investigators speak openly about local domestic violence centers and the resources that are in our community to help victims. Survivors tell us that's very important. Why? Because it makes it more difficult for abusers and domestic violence to hide in plain sight.
Law enforcement in our state-certified domestic violence centers work hand in hand to help people. You don't have to wait until a relationship turns violent to call for help. The domestic violence hotline is there for you anytime. The number to call is 1-800-500-1119. Before we went on the air tonight, we connected with the Florida Coalition Against Domestic Violence, which operates the hotline, and they have people standing by right now to talk to you.
That hotline connects you to the state-certified domestic violence centers serving your county. Those centers are the Spring of Tampa Bay, serving Hillsborough County, Casa, St. Petersburg, and the Haven of RCS in Pinellas County, Sunrise of Pasco, and the Salvation Army Domestic Violence Program serves Pasco County.
Our other domestic violence centers are the Peace River Center, serving Polk, Hardy, and Highlands counties, Hope Family Services in Manatee County, Spark, serving Sarasota and DeSoto counties, Dawn Center in Hernando County, and CASA in Citrus County.
Earlier in this broadcast, we showed you the program that allows kids in shelter to express themselves and heal through art. Well, now in her first television interview, the teacher at the center of this very unique experience says helping these children has changed the way she sees her role as an educator. Her story is one more example. Anyone can use their gifts to make a difference. The children in shelter at the Springs Domestic Violence Center know her only as Miss Martha.
They teach me something every time I go.
We can't tell you her real name, but we can tell you she's an extraordinary teacher.
We have a whole separate section of our website. Okay.
I met her when she came to our newsroom recently to talk about her love for art and children.
Do you feel like you make a difference in their life? I think I do. I hope I do.
For the last 18 years, Miss Martha has been a public school art teacher, an educator who's also felt a calling to work with kids in crisis to help them express the little voice that sometimes goes unheard. In 2012, she got the chance to make that dream come true.
And I thought I'd won the lottery with that, because that's something I've always wanted to, was to get in with the Spring. And for it to be art, that's amazing. You know, that's for me, that's an art teacher dream, to be able to take this and bring it out of the school system and into another quiet organization that can carry that on with them through their whole life.
A few times a month, Miss Martha quietly heads to the school inside the Hillsborough County shelter sent by the Tampa Museum of Art. And on each visit, she uses art to help open up their little hearts and minds from what may be a very dark place.
Going through the process, working on their own art, it releases a lot of emotions and even some feelings maybe they didn't know they had. And sometimes it could be a negative thing, but you need to get that out too. You know, you need to release that, and there's always joy at the end. You always feel accomplished at the end.
There are moments when she can sense a child is in pain after permanently escaping an abusive home. She recalls one simple drawing with likely a complex story behind it.
They made a house, and they didn't want to put any people inside because they didn't want to, they said nobody lived there anymore. So, you know, I don't ask questions, but I can only assume a reason why.
The teacher is not allowed to stay in touch with any of the children beyond her visits or even know their names. But that does not keep her from making a connection with each and every one.
It doesn't take long for them to trust me. And I mean, that's kind of priceless.
Priceless, too, was the rare moment she experienced in public recently. She recognized a mother with her kids walking to school. She had met them years earlier in shelter. They didn't see her, and she didn't stop. But Miss Martha knew they were safe.
They walked as though things were okay, you know, moving forward, clean slate. Yeah. Oh, it felt great. It felt great. It makes you appreciate every person that you see every day, because you don't know where they're coming from. You know, I mean, these guys are dropped off by the sheriff. They don't know what's happening the next day. So to have something for an hour or so consistent that they can control, they feel empowered. You know, if they're a little tense when they start, they're extremely relaxed at the end, no matter what, no matter what.
And we want to thank Miss Martha for sharing her story for the very first time publicly and for all of her years of dedication to the children.
And we are also so grateful for the hard work of other courageous people who, like Miss Martha, are not afraid to try new things in an effort to help survivors.
I absolutely loved it. I learned some new ways to open my mind up to new things, new ways to find out information and solve problems realistically. I love the art and painting. It was truly amazing.
These are just a few of the thank you letters for the gift of a life-changing experience.
The class was excellent and well planned out. It really opened my mind to creative problem solving and tools to use for the rest of my life.
CASA adult advocate Pat Riley-Sanderson says she still can't believe the evolution she witnessed after just 4 hours at the Dali Museum's Innovation Lab, a one-of-a-kind program encouraging creative problem solving. Businesses pay thousands for this experience, but Pat and her group from CASA got to go for free. Michael Maldonado made it happen.
I knew from being in workshops myself how much innovation labs could help with personal growth and personal development. So I knew that there was an opportunity there for us to make a really big impact for these women.
He was so convinced, he got sponsors to pay for them.
It's the idea of having hope in a hopeless situation. And I think what's great about this program is that it instills hope in everyone.
Hope and creativity. Instructor Kimberly McGuire had a front row seat watching these ladies blossom.
Ready? I like to call it the guide on the side. You know, you're guiding people to a realization of what they already have inside them.
For somebody living with domestic violence, they've been taught what to think, what to wear, what to look at, where to go, what to see, and to be able to present to this group of individuals this opportunity to come in and see that it is not only acceptable to think differently, but it's, you know, just this wonderful way of looking at life differently. And so we were very excited and felt very honored to be a part of this chance.
And that's the beauty of this course, this experience, and this artist.
It really is just a mind-blowing moment for people to realize that when they were up close to something, they saw one thing, and then they were a little bit farther away, they saw something else. Sometimes when you're up close to things that are hard in your life and situations that are difficult, things might look one way, but hopefully once you get a little bit farther away from those things, you can take a little bit of a different perspective on them and be able to kind of put those other things behind you and see something else.
When I looked at the women and that spiral staircase going up, just the magnitude of it, and to me, once again, it just shows that's how great your life can be. Your life can be as big as this place is. And how could you walk away and not feel encouraged, not feel like there's greater things ahead of me than what was behind me?
I really honestly can't think of a lot of jobs where at the end of a session, somebody will come up to you and say, "This changed my life."
And once again, our message tonight is everyone has something to give in the fight against domestic violence.
Over the years, experts have told us this war will be won with more awareness and prevention in our schools.
Yeah, it's the law right here in Florida. And since 2010, schools are now required to have a teen dating violence policy to handle these cases.
Teachers have to include the awareness in health education for students in grades 7th through the 12th. With so much on the line, experts are saying it is never too early.
3,650 days of domestic violence awareness, 120 months, a decade. At some point, this work stopped being just work. It was the assignment we talked about even after the lights and the cameras were off, the work we took home. A decade of sit-down interviews had revealed how easily domestic violence hides in plain sight, how devastating it is on the kids. So as we reach this 10-year milestone of the Taking Action Against Domestic Violence campaign, we go back to the why that fuels the work. Experts say this is a war that can be won if the offensive starts early.
Truthfully, I believe that the future of domestic violence work is in preventing it from ever happening, preventing it right from the start of that one single incident, stopping it from ever happening again.
Experts like the team at the Sunrise of Pasco are working on prevention curriculum at the national level. Chosen for its second round of the Delta Project, Sunrise is part of a research study funded by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
There's only 10 states in the entire U.S. that receive this funding and 2 centers in the state of Florida. Sunrise is one of those programs, and so we have this really fortunate and unique opportunity.
Now, through the year 2023, 10 states will attack domestic violence from all different angles. For Sunrise, the focus on prevention has advocates heading back to middle school.
That's the goal, is to work ourselves out of a job. We're able to talk a lot about healthy relationships. These are things that we are looking for in a healthy relationship. These are things that are like, maybe we should think about that.
By the time advocates reach teens and high school, the work is considered early intervention. Tampa Bay state-certified domestic violence centers and advocates at Hands Across the Bay and Heartland for Children all have programs we've spotlighted over the years. Polk County high schools were the first to have the Yellow Dress stage play in Tampa Bay.
It was very quiet because we'd never done a production and the kids were unsure of what to expect. And now the word has gotten out and the auditorium is full, even more full every year.
Denise Norgan is the school guidance counselor at George Jenkins High School in Lakeland. She's been scheduling the Yellow Dress every October since 2012, right before homecoming. She says dating abuse awareness and prevention work, convinced by the changes she's witnessed in students and a decade in private practice.
I wouldn't do anything else, but the love that I share with my students, that conversation, that one-on-one, that moment when they say, you know, I get it, I understand, that is what means the world to me.
Experts from the jailhouse to the classroom say there are things we can all do to protect young adults from dating abuse. Start when they're teens. Talk about healthy versus unhealthy relationships. And by all means, start in the mirror.
You've got to make sure that whatever you're showing them is the right thing. If you're in a domestic situation that's unkind, violent, emotionally abusive, you need to fix that. And you need to talk to your kids about fixing it so that they understand there's a way out.
If experts work towards an ideal 8 visits, 45 minutes each with teens at school, how much more time can you invest at home, at school, at work?
If you're always told, don't do this, the brain says, okay, what do I do? And so it's of no use to say, don't do this. Say, this behavior is unhealthy. If the person that you're dating is pressuring you to, maybe they're pressuring you to have sex, or they're pressuring you to drink, or they're pressuring you to give up all of your friends. If this is happening, then what you should do is talk to your parent, talk to your counselor, talk to somebody who you trust to get advice on how do I come back to this person and say no. But we've got to role play these situations.
It's more about a saturation rather than a sprinkle. So we're looking to be in a classroom with the same youth 6 to 8 times. That's when we know we make a difference.
Prevention is absolutely the future of domestic violence work, and that's why it's so important to me, to make a difference in our community and to make our environment and our places that we live safer is by preventing it before it even starts.
And before we go tonight, we want to thank the Florida Coalition Against Domestic Violence for recognizing our work with the incredible honor, the Key to Hope Award.
This award for a decade of domestic violence awareness is the very first time a media organization in our state is being honored this way.
And once again, we want to congratulate our Officer of the Year, Assistant Chief Antonio Gilliam. It was an honor to have him here with us tonight on this special evening.
From our family to yours, thank you so much for joining us for taking action against domestic violence. Good night.
Breaking news the moment it happens. Follow ABC Action News on Twitter.
It all started at one family night in Dumfries, Virginia. Family night is for everybody. It's a time for families to do crafts together.
The kids just love going to Chick-fil-A for dinner. Being the single mom and getting everybody ready, it was tough. We would get there a little bit late, like on the tail end of it. Helen saw that I was having trouble getting them to Chick-fil-A for the family night on time and actually got it extended another hour. Noticing things like that, I never